Welcome back to Animal Crossing New Horizons. I'm Dear Darling, and shall we see what's going on our lovely island of Fawnhallow today? Where we're recording a little bit earlier because I'll be busy later today. I have no backlog of videos right now, despite it being a Monday, but it is a bank holiday, which is lovely. But yeah, if you can tell by today's episode title, I'm finally talking about Rabbit and Steel, which is a game I've been playing for quite a bit now with some friends. And a bit by myself as well, and I'm finally talking about it because I feel like we've hit the major milestone of it. So good morning everyone. Right now in Fawnhallow it's 8:49 a.m. on Monday, May 26th, 2025. So yeah, Rabbit and Steel. I mean, I'm not gonna spoil the story. I'm like, the story is nice and all. I don't think it should not be the definitive reason for you playing the game, I think. But yeah, Rabbit and Steel, is a bullet hell game in the style of Toho, if you've ever played that. But it's kind of combined with sort of like MMORPG raid stylings. You know, it's kind of like, I've not played Final Fantasy XIV bosses, but I hear it's basically like playing Final Fantasy XIV bosses but in 2D. And it's genuinely a lot of fun because you can play up to 4 people all at once, or you can play solo as well. And it's a very, very challenging game. I'm not gonna lie. I'm not gonna say it's particularly easy. If evidenced by the fact that we've been playing. I don't know how many hours in. And the reason I'm making this video now, I have 89 hours in it, 89.4 hours in it. And the reason I'm making this video now is finally have beaten Lunar difficulty, aka the hardest difficulty in the game, with every character. But yes, so it's kind of like a 2D Final Fantasy XIV or any sort of like modern MMORPG fight, where essentially you're just fighting bosses, but the bosses all have a range of bullet hell style attacks. So like one of them is they'll put a circle on someone and then everyone needs to get in the circle, otherwise you have a high chance of taking damage. Or there'll be something like what's another good example? There'll be like, I mean, there'll be the specific sort of mechanics which appear in each boss fight, which I guess is kind of a spoiler. If you want to, remain unspoiled about that. But I think the execution is more the difficult part of the game rather than necessarily the ideation. But ideation's more about the discovery. So yeah, there'll be something like that. There'll be attacks. I'm trying to think of an attack which is not specific to one of the boss areas. There'll be an attack which, I mean, I think all the attacks are kind of specific to one boss area. Anyway, so maybe we'll get into that. But there's a certain style of attacks which a boss will do, and it will test both your reactionary knowledge the first time you see it, and every time you see it afterwards for like exactly where to be, and then you're just sort of like understanding. It's a lot of memorization, I would certainly say, once you get to the harder difficulties. But yeah, it's also like a roguelike. So you play the game, you go into like an intro world to begin with, and you get 2 items, and then there's a shop where every class has 4 different abilities, which all follow primary, secondary, special, defensive. And you get a shop where you purchase upgrades for them, and then you go into one of 5 different worlds. You need to basically defeat 3 of the 5 different subworlds before you get to the final world, where you defeat the final boss. And that's essentially it as a game. I think conceptually it's a very, very straightforward game, and you might know immediately, is that your sort of game or something? If you like Bullet House, if you like these very difficult games, if you want like a rather challenging experience with a group of friends, this is a fantastic game, in my opinion, for you to try. Absolutely give it a go. It's great fun, I think. And yeah, I think it's even good fun, like, because the normal difficulties and easy difficulties are a lot more manageable, I think, accessible than the other difficulties. Hard is getting like pretty like difficult, and Luna's getting like insane, I think, with difficulty, where you have to have a lot of memorization, and so you can just basically check out whenever you're comfortable with it. But yeah, let's talk about game mechanics. So I guess this is your spoiler warning, quote quote, if you don't want to hear about the game mechanics. But overall, I really like the game, and I really like a lot of the mechanics, because I think they really sort of test your limit as like teammates to sort of cooperate together, coordinate, communicate, etc, etc. What was also really cool is the game changes based on how many players you have. So solo mode has similar aspects to 4-player mode, but you know, obviously some attacks only work in 4 players, some attacks only work in single player, so there is variation between. Some of the attacks don't really change too much between 4-player and 3 players, I know, but 3-player and 2-player do change some of the attacks as well. So they all share similar traits, but slightly different experiences each time. Anyway, so yes, let's talk about the intro. The intro world is cool because you'll fight 3 different bosses, and each of the bosses is based off one of the sub areas. So they give you like a small taster of each of the sub areas. So just like a high level overview, we got a place like the Scholar's Nest, which gives you very interesting mechanics, such as it introduces gravity, where you'll basically constantly sink to the bottom. It introduces teleportation mechanics, where you'll teleport after a set amount of time, so you need to make sure that where you position yourself, I keep knocking over my chapstick, where you position yourself is where you end up in the right place, not where you start in the right place. What's the other mechanic we have? Oh, chains, yeah, where it locks your movement vertically or horizontally, and you basically got to dodge using that movement. And then what's really cool is that each of the sub-bosses introduces each of those mechanics. So like the first 2 bosses have 2 variations each. One is the gravity one, where, you know, the mechanic is basically you're in gravity and you need to rotate around and you'll teleport onto each other, or the other one is your drop pools on the ground, which will damage you if you ever walk into them again, essentially. Well, like meteors are constantly falling. There's going to be a lot of terminology. It's going to be hard to describe the attacks without you seeing them, but that's basically it. And then, so that first boss has 2 variations. The second boss has 2 variations as well. There's one of the chains where basically you all need to group up, and then you all need to spread out in certain patterns. And there's another one where there's like a grid of attacks which happen. You need to sort of weave in between while chained, and then you also need to link up sometimes. And then the third boss is like a sub-boss, a mini-boss, essentially, which is always the same every time, but the attacks can be different, where they introduce probably the hardest mechanic of the world. And in this case, in the Scholar's Nest, which is all based around crows and ravens and the scholarly pursuits, is a character. She teleports people back and forth, and she'll often give you up to like 3 teleports at a time, and you just got to resolve them, figuring out where to go. And then what's really cool is when you get to the final boss. The final boss is similar, where it has the same series of attacks, but it's different variants on each of attacks. It combines all the elements together, and it says, okay, we've shown you everything that this world has. Can you put them together? So the first part will just like combine a lot of different things together. A lot of it is like you just have to kind of know what you're doing or figure it out very quickly. But the very cool thing is then like halfway through it transforms into like its animalistic form, and then its attacks get harder in a sense, and it often has like a signature attack where it will just be like, hey, pay attention now, this is going to be something big. And in the Scholar's Nest case, it's a very cool, it's maybe my favourite of all of them, where they actually go like, pay attention now, and then they'll go 1, 2, 3, and show you 3 different attack patterns in a row without doing the attack. And then it will take away all attack hints until just the millisecond before the attack hits. So you basically gotta memorize the like 3-4 attacks which happen in order, and then execute upon them. So like it would be like, oh, everyone with the same colour group up, and then spread out again, and then everyone line up horizontally, and then you'll have no visual indicator, because normally you'll have a visual indicator. You'll have like a colour on you, and it'll be like a coloured ring which will appear for like 3-4 seconds, so you have time to react and go to meet each other. This time it won't appear until just before it hits, to basically validate if you got it right or wrong. And it's such a cool concept, because you're like frozen in time while they're basically, and it fits the theme so perfectly, where they try and teach you the art of air attack, and then they continue on. Scholar's Nest though is definitely the easiest world, I think, of all of them, despite how difficult that attack sounds. It's like a welcome break, because I think it's once you know the mechanics, it's very easy to deal with the mechanics, because they look more intimidating than they actually are. But yeah, so Scholar's Nest I think is very, very cool, and has a very, very cool, one of the coolest like boss signature mechanics. What next? We've got like King's Arsenal, which is all based around wolves. The first boss introduces to Turbulent Winds, which is basically, if my one complaint about this game is Turbulent Winds feels so awkward to move in. But basically how I describe Turbulent Winds is you move a set distance every time you move, and moving feels turn-based now rather than it's discrete. Your movement is discrete rather than continuous. That's probably the way to put it. That's the one thing, my one complaint is that it feels, for how snappy the rest of the game feels, Turbulent Winds feels, I think deliberately so by the way, very, very inconvenient is how I'd put it. And I think it's because it's a thing which eases in and eases out of a movement, and it makes it very difficult to understand when you need to input the next movement, or like when you've completely stopped. I think it's very adjustable. I think it's very much just a game feel sort of thing because of how it ends up being communicated. But anyway, Turbulent Winds, that's it. Your movement is now discrete rather than continuous. It's one of the most difficult ones, and it's still to the day. I think that mini boss I probably take the most damage on out of any mini bosses. Depending on the variation. One of the variation where you spin around in a circle is crazy difficult, I think, to get the movement down right. The other one is basically you just go left and right, and you have to just rearrange your party. Of who's like at the top, bottom, forward or back, etc, etc. That one's not too difficult. The second mini boss is a duo mini boss, which introduces attacks where you're basically locked into certain boxes, like you can only move around in certain regions. It has a bit of tethers, it has a bit of spread attacks as well, which you'll see in other mini bosses as well, but yeah, it will basically lock you to like half a screen or whatever, and then there'll be a grid of attacks which you need to avoid. And then the mini-boss... What's the mini-boss? Oh, it's Tasha. Tasha introduces the cleave mechanic, where basically she will say half a screen where my character centered is now unsafe. You have to move out of it. And it's... I think it's my favourite mini-boss. It's such a fun mini-boss, because then she starts out with herself and she just like cleaves half a screen, and then she puts a cleave on everyone else, and it's like, okay, well, that was too simple. And then she'll duplicate herself, and then she'll start putting multiple cleaves on multiple versions of her clones, and she'll do this crazy thing where there will be arrows above her head, and she'll move basically like half a second before the cleave goes off. So it's kind of like a teleport mechanics on the enemy, where you have to figure out where she's going to end up, where all this overlapping of cleaves reveals one uncleaved spot, and then you have to move her as a group. The attack where there's 4 of her on the screen all at once, all of them move, and half of them have a cleave and half of your party has a cleave, is insanely difficult, but is one of the most rewarding, I think, attacks to finally actualize. The final boss here is Miran, and she's kind of cool. Again, she puts all the sort of mechanics together. She does a lot of cleaves, so there's a lot of movement around in her boss. Oh yeah, I don't know if I said, but the King's Arsenal is like a very sort of militaristic sort of tribe, all based around wolves. Every single boss in that game, in that kingdom, for some reason, moves around like crazy. But her signature move is, when she turns into wolf, is that she'll do like a huge slash across the screen. She'll disable the use of your defensive, which means that basically a defensive is a ability you can use, and it will give you invulnerability for like a very short time. She'll disable your defensive, and you just have to dodge whatever attack she has, using very like tiny micro movements. It's very cool. Cinematic one, we might say. So yeah, that's King's Arsenal. Then you have Church Mouse Streets, which is all about doing AoE damage, because almost all the boss fights are multi-boss fights. So you fight 2 creatures at once, which means if you can hit multiple of them, you'll do double damage essentially. But the first one introduces, what does it introduce? Tethers is what it introduces. Being like chained together to someone, and then also having a tether which you need to stretch, which means you can't be too close to someone. And it's very, very cool. One of them, it also introduces a very heavy mechanic, which basically makes one character move very, very, very slowly on your team. The second one introduces, I'm not sure, it uses the chain. I guess it introduces the expanding mechanic, where there'll be like a horizontal bar across the entire thing, and it will say like a number on it, and then that bar will expand that many times the number says, and you just basically have to make sure you dodge it in the end. Then the mini boss introduces, I don't know, it uses a lot of different things. I guess it does the countdown tethers as its mechanics, where basically you'll have a tether to a location in the space, and it'll say a number on it, and that will be when it procs. So you just have to make sure that when it procs in that order of 1, 2, 3, 4, you are a certain distance away. And then the final one, it introduces it all together, and then it does the most multi-boss of all attacks, where basically it will summon like a horde of different mice, and each mice is responsible for a different mechanic in the boss fight, and you basically just need to AoE them down and then DPS the boss. So she's got ads, I guess. I need to make sure we hurry through. Emerald Lakeside, Red Dragon Keep is the next one. Oh yeah, the mice is also like sort of like a religious sect, I suppose. No, mice, I don't know. Red Dragon Keep is kind of like, I don't know, they're kind of like capitalists, as I understand it. All about riches and aristocracy is perhaps a better way to put it. Red Dragon Keepers has some of the most challenging attacks to read, I think. The first one's a duo boss fight, where basically they'll be expanding attacks. I think it also introduces the spread out mechanic. Not the spread out, sorry, that's another basic one, but another one where it's like, there's a specific name for them in Final Fantasy 14, I can't remember what they're called off the top of my head. Proteans, that's it. Where cones will expand from a point, you just got to make sure you're spread out. The second one has like these box-based, these cross-based attacks, where there'll be a box on the screen and then it'll expand out all horizontally and vertically. You just can't be aligned with it. The third one's very cool. It's got these rotating beams. You're basically locked in this giant circle, and you have to sort of just constantly rotate round and be in certain places to make sure your attacks work out fine. And the fourth one puts everything together. She has some of the craziest attacks, where she basically goes off screen so you can't attack her, and then she'll just put down like boom, like 8 attacks at once, resolve it. Those attacks that once you memorize them are very easy to solve. She has one of the hardest attacks though, I think, in the game, is where she'll put down 3 rotating beams and divide like the plane you're in into 6 sections, but only one of those sections will not be hit by the rotating beams, and you have like 3 seconds to figure out which section that is. I can do it successfully about half the time, and then the other half the time I look at it and be like, I can't figure this out in time, I'll use my defensive. I still need to practice that one. It's really quite difficult. I have a lot of difficulty trying to figure that one out in time. But that's Red Dragon Keep. The last place, Emerald Lakeside, they're all musical artists. I feel like maybe I'll talk about more Rabbit Steel like tomorrow, to be honest. I love this game so much, but Rabbit Steel is all artists. They're all very sort of musical or talented in one sense or another. The first boss fight introduces the chain mechanic, where you're chained to the boss and has a lot of matched colours together. The second boss is a duo boss, and it introduces the stop moving and keep moving mechanic, where when the timer runs out you had to either be stop moving or keep moving respectively. Just to make sure it works. And the third mechanic is a very cool mechanic, where you're playing Osu, you'll get assigned a colour, and then there'll be like coloured circles that appear which are numbered, and you have to basically line up with each circle as it appears, Osu style. And then the fourth boss, she ties everything together, and her signature thing is that she'll basically sing, and she'll do exactly what that third boss did, where like she'll give you a colour and then you have to spread out and match the pattern Osu style. It's very, very cool, all those bosses. There's a lot of like moving in Emerald Lakeside. There's a really nice song which goes along with it. And then, finally, you have a Pale Keep. I forget. Pale Keep, the first few bosses are basically like rehashes of mechanics you've seen before. They're basically just DPS checks. And then the final boss is just like all the mechanics you've seen interwoven together. And then her signature move basically is she'll do a countdown, and then by the end of that countdown you have to use your defensive, which basically means you have to basically save your defensive, or you have to have a build which has invulnerability in it some way. So it's effectively like a timer at the end of the day. But she's actually, surprisingly, the Pale Keep is actually one of the easiest worlds, mainly because you've got so many items and upgrades by the time you get there. It's not too difficult. It's actually the first world which is the hardest, because you have the fewest items to work with. But yeah, there's a DLC coming for it soon where it looks like there's going to be 5 more worlds, which is crazy. A new character. I haven't even spoken about the characters yet and what I like about them. But yeah, I love this game. It's so much fun. Play it or don't play it, up to you. You probably can decide already if it's a game for you. Rabbit Seal. It's a great time. I love boss fights. You know how much I love a boss rush. So, I'm going to wrap this episode up here. So if you have been watching, thank you very much. It's been Animal Crossing New Horizons. I've been Dear Darling. Likes, comments, subscription, shares, greatly appreciated. Socials, Discord down below. Hope to see each other again. But for now, it's our farewells. Until next time. Bye-bye for now.